Hi, my name's Daniel Lee, and today I'm going to be telling you about 3D reconstruction using a stereo camera. This is using a homemade stereo camera and software that I've written in Python so that it's easy to follow, which uses a lot of functions from OpenCV. If you'd like more information, it's available on GitHub and on my blog. I've got links below. Now what you see here in our file browser is the folder we've got open in the terminal over here, and a number of different folders and files in that same folder in my file explorer. If you were to set this up and do it on your own, you would build your stereo camera and calibrate it. So I've got calibration images that I use to calibrate it and the calibration itself. And then you would take a number of stereo images, which I have quite a number in here, and use them to produce point clouds. And point clouds are what you want. These are 3D point clouds containing both the coordinates and the colors of the detected points in three-dimensional space from both of your two-dimensional images. This folder here is simply the software that I've written that we'll be using. This is a chessboard that you can print out and use for calibrating, and these are settings for the block matching algorithm that you'll use to produce your point clouds. Now if you take a look at the stereo images folder here, you'll see that I have two subfolders, Control and Training. Control contains a number of pictures that I would like to use to make 3D models, and Training contains pictures that I took with the intent of tuning the algorithm that I used to get my disparity maps, which are the precursor to the 3D point clouds. These are pictures that I took in a controlled environment, and I'll explain to you why I chose these particular pictures for training. We can go through them. There's only 5 of them, point by point. The first picture is of a chair with obvious 3D structures, and it's especially interesting from my perspective because it has many homogeneous areas in this picture. For example, this blanket or the pillow, parts of the armrest, etc. These are points that are rather ambiguous. It's hard to find a match for them in the partner image, and so it presents a difficulty for our block matching algorithm, which seeks corresponding points in both images and uses the disparity between them to find the 3D coordinates. This picture I took also because of its strong 3D structures. You've got obvious blocks and a couch in the background, etc. But also because it's very texture rich. You've got a very texture-rich carpet, you've got boxes which have obvious matching points located all over them, so I expect good results with this picture. This picture is the same, it's just of the same chair from a different perspective. This is also of another box that's also quite feature-rich, with another feature-rich carpet and a couch in the background. And this is a portrait of myself holding the 3D camera, the stereo camera, and my laptop which it's attached to. Now if you're interested in building such a camera, I've got instructions on my blog as well. So now we're going to produce some disparity maps from these pictures and take a look at the results. Now in order to do so, I'm going to navigate into my stereovision folder. Try not to make typos. And here you've got a number of different Python modules. The one that interests us at the moment is tune calibrated pair. You can find more information on this by calling its help function. What it asks for is whether it should use stereo BM or stereo SGBM. We'll be using stereo SGBM today, which is the default setting. It also asks where it should save its settings to. Since I've already got good settings, I'm not going to bother saving it to any place. And then it asks you for the calibration of the camera that you were using, which is a folder. It's located in calibration, and the directory where the input images are stored. So that's also 2 folders up, and then in stereo images and training. So let's start training. As you can see here, this is the first picture, and you can roughly recognize, I'm sorry, is this picture. You can roughly recognize the contours of the chair. You can see here there's a little bit more disparity. Here the algorithm hardly found any information at all. And this is using the default settings of the block matcher. Now you'll want to retune your block matcher for every calibrated camera, for every time that you recalibrate your camera. But as you can see, if I play around with these settings, I can produce new disparity maps and get results that are better or worse. For example, speckle range seems to make the results a little bit better. If I set it down one, you see less noise. And I'm going to set this to settings that I know are good because I've already tuned the set of images. But the principle behind all of this is that you set your settings so that they match your camera. And so you'll just need to play around with this and find out what works best for you. So that's correct. Uniqueness. Disparity, that's 12. Set window size. Speckle window size. Set that 171. So these settings look a little bit better. We can go through just by pressing a key. Pressing a key in the picture window. You can advance the next picture and also tune that one. So here, as you can see, we've got pretty good disparity on my self-portrait. You've got lots of disparity on the part that was closest to the camera, which is the camera itself. My head was slightly behind that. You've got different parts of the room behind that. Also, the computer was fairly close. So this is what you're looking for. You're looking for high disparity in features that were physically close to the camera and low disparity in features that were far away from the camera. And when you're finished, you get a report here. So this is our report, and you can see how often I selected what values. If I had selected different values, then I would find them sorted by the most common to the least common values that I selected. And I could use that accordingly to set up my block matcher so that it has settings that I consider optimal. Let's find out how the block matcher performs when I use those settings to produce point clouds. So if you're wanting to find out how to do so, it would be using the image pair to PLY, and that makes MeshLab compatible point clouds. I'm not going to go into that right now because it's in the documentation that you can find on GitHub and also on my blog. And here we can see the training results. So this is for the first image of the chair. If we move a little bit closer in, we can see that it performed rather well, especially if we increase the size of the points. You can see up here the back of the chair where we had treble, recognize any features. You can also see the table that was behind the chair. And of course it looks the best from the perspective the picture was taken. But if we just leave it in exactly that perspective, you might not notice that there's a hole in the pillow here. Now this hole is obviously wrong, and I attribute it to the homogeneity of the pillow itself. It's hard for the block matcher to find points in both images that it can specifically relate to the points in the partner image on such homogeneous surfaces, and so that's why you get this hole in the pillow. And the same goes for the blanket here as well. But on a whole, the chair, if I rotate it to a completely different perspective, we can take a look at how the actual image looks. So this would be roughly corresponding to the perspective that we have in the picture. You can see the table back there. If I rotate the chair, you can see the proportions are still pretty good. Here you've got the chair's arms, there's the pillow, and the background is the back of the chair. So as you can see, there are points that were recognized for every surface on the chair, and also for the pillows that were on the chair, and they're in the right positions. Now the points aren't very dense in this picture because the results aren't that great, but they're still there. Now what you also see are some mistakes. These are some outliers, and if you wanted this to be really robust, you need to be able to remove these outliers. One method of doing it could be checking the validity of the pictures that you put into the algorithm. OpenTV gives you back boxes that you can use to cut out certain parts of the pictures, and you could cut out points that correspond to the borders of the pictures that were removed during rectification. That would be one possibility. You can also do it statistically, etc. So let's take a look at some more point clouds. This is the second picture. Now this point cloud is quite satisfying, as you can see here. The boxes were recognized quite well. Now for reference, this is the original picture. And you see here on the edges, we've got some difficulty on this blue part. It's just kind of difficult to recognize because it's so homogeneous again. And on the top of the second box, hardly anything was recognized. Now the structure of the boxes themselves is correct. If we zoom out a bit, we can also see that what's this? That's the leg of the couch. The leg of the couch has the proper, this is the leg of the couch right there, and it has the correct distance compared to these boxes. Just judging that visually. Yeah, so these results are quite promising, and of course you can adjust to have a finer resolution in MeshLab. MeshLab is not my program, it's just a program that I'm using to visualize these point clouds, but I can very much suggest it to all of you to use it as well. Let's take a look at the third picture. This looks like the algorithm performed a bit better, so this corresponds to this picture. It's a little bit easier, the light was a little bit better. You can see there's more points to match along the back of the chair, although that doesn't seem to have been too successful. Now, if I rotate that to a completely different perspective, you can see the chair was recognized quite well, as was the pillow. In proportion to the chair, the position of the table, it's all correct. So we could say there the matching algorithm worked quite well. Moving on to the second to last. This is the wood box. If we look at it from above, of course, this is not the perspective that we photographed it from, but here you've got the couch, the colors correspond to the couch, and that is positioned absolutely correctly. Along the middle of it, where you've got the highest slant compared to the picture, you've got hardly any points at all, which makes sense because the point density would have been very low there. And as you can see, you can very easily recognize the structures in this point cloud, and they look pretty good even from perspectives that the cameras didn't have, because we're actually working with a 3D model here. So that's that. That worked out pretty well. Can make it a little bit finer by reducing the point size. And these are quite satisfying results. Last but not least is the point cloud of me. Oh, come on. There we go. So here we can see I was recognized quite well. I also have homogeneous surfaces on top of my head. All of the hair looks the same, so the algorithm had problems there. Also, we have certain parts of my body that are occluded by my hand. For example, this is the actual perspective, close to the actual perspective that was seen from the left camera. As you can also see, there's a hole behind my hand, and that's because the right camera wasn't able to see what was behind there, so there was no match found. You can see my computer, you also see the window behind me. My face seems to be a little bit, well, no, So this would be looking at my face from another perspective, and this is also correct as far as the proportions are concerned. If you take a look from above, you can see again the proportions are correct. There's my laptop, there's my hand, there's my head. So this is actually how I was standing, with the laptop here, with the camera here. We can even take a look at the camera. And this is getting recursive with 3D models of 3D cameras, but it's still interesting. So the resolution isn't as high as it is in the original pictures. You can't expect it to be, but as you can see, the front surface of the camera was recognized quite well, as was my hand and my face. Satisfying results from the training images. Of course, in the real world, you're not going to have time, if you're using this, for example, for navigation purposes, to tune your block matching algorithm to every single photo you take. The purpose of tuning your algorithm beforehand is to find settings that are optimal for a wide variety of images, which is what we're going to test now. So now those are the training images, and let's open up the control images and the control point clouds. So I have a number of control images that I've taken here. We'll go through them rather quickly. This one should present a challenge to the block matching algorithm for obvious reasons. You've got lots of objects in this picture that are fairly homogeneous, and they're pretty far away from the cameras themselves, so you should be expecting that there will be low disparity there, and the lower the disparity is, the lower your accuracy for your depth perception will be. Also, in the very back of the picture you have overexposure, which will be a problem. This is a dog. This is a coffee machine, also quite difficult because of its homogeneous areas here. I'm not expecting excellent results from this, but it will be definitely interesting to take a look at, and especially along edges and corners we should be able to see some structures. There's a guy sitting at his desk with photos in the background, cabinet, etc. And this is a cluttered table with another table in the background. Other tables in the background. Okay, so I'm not going to walk you through the process again of producing these point clouds. I'm just going to show you the point clouds. And the interesting thing about them is that they were produced using the pre-tuned block matching algorithm. So the block matcher was not adapted specifically to these photos. It was adapted specifically to the camera, however, and we're hoping that that will make a difference and give us good results. This is the first picture. As you can see, the results aren't the absolute best that you could expect. However, okay, we've got some striping on the chairs at the very back. What you can recognize, though, is that these chairs are recognized correctly. From the colors, you can see that these points correspond to the chairs in the background, and I can tell you that the distances are correct. Kind of a confusing image, but as you can see, it works out to a certain extent, and there you have the chairs in the background, and they're matched just along their edges. So you also see the overexposed bits kind of clinging to the actual features that we're seeing. That's because the overexposure is another homogeneous texture in the background, making problems with the algorithm. Next up, the dog. So I think this is quite a promising result. You can see the structure of the dog also from another perspective, so let's transform the perspective and take a look at it from the side. And here you can obviously see that although the structure of the face wasn't perfectly reconstructed, it was reconstructed quite well. Also note this door stopper in the background right here, positioned correctly when we rotate the perspective to see the dog from the side. Tool case is also there, leaning inwards toward the dog. As you can see here, that's also correct. Oh, Sadly, we don't have the back of the dog. We need a really special camera that can see through the dog and give us pictures from the other side. Now, you may be asking, well, for the side of the dog, you're probably not asking why we're missing points there. The obvious reason is because they're homogeneous, so it's very difficult to produce accurate points there. And on the face, we're also missing some points. What's up with that? Well, the problem is the reflectivity of the dog's face, I suspect. You've got an eye which reflects differently in different light, and you've also got a shiny, moist nose, and you've got a piece of the picture that is difficult to match on both images because it's right in between two features that are difficult to match. So the feature itself also can't get matched that easily. So there, in the dog's left eye is recognized quite well, but the dog's right eye and parts of its nose are missing. All in all, however, I think these are very promising results, the dog model. Let's move on to the coffee machine. Here you can see the coffee machine largely was not recognized. Now, you do have points along the side of the coffee machine right here, along the front of the coffee machine. Now, they're not recognized the way we'd like them to be. So this is coming from the side yet now. I don't know about you, but I have extensive knowledge and experience of coffee machines because I drink lots of coffee, and the nozzle should be sticking out of it. The problems are because of the homogeneity of the front of the coffee machine. You can see in the background, this part of the picture was recognized quite well. So let's take a look at that. The bread maker is there, sticking out of the wall. The wall is also there, and so is the jar. You can see that they're positioned correctly. Now, this is not perfect, but I'd say that the results are still pretty good, especially considering that we haven't done anything to work on these point clouds. These are absolutely raw point clouds. The only thing that's been done to them was removing points that were detected at infinite distance. Those are removed from the point cloud and considered irrelevant. Man in office. It seems to have worked out quite well. You've got a nice line going down the cabinet and the side of the desk there. The folders there. Let's see the folders from above. I think it's very interesting to see the same picture from a different perspective and see that the perspective is still, or the proportions of the objects imaged are still correct. You can see his arms sticking out of the correct positions from his body. So this is a very nice point cloud in my opinion. You can also see the contours of the face itself, so the depth resolution is quite good. And last but not least, the cluttered table. You see the table in the background, the second table. So recognize not being at infinite distance, and the distance itself between these two tables is pretty good. However, it looks like the structure of the table did not get picked up by the algorithm. The table itself was seen as at a constant distance. This is the focus of the picture. Now, your algorithm performs best at rather close distances because it looks for areas with relatively high disparity, or it needs disparity. It needs high disparity in order to get 3D coordinates out of the images. So if we take a look at the table, we can see, yes, the objects on the table are at the correct positions. So this is also quite a positive result. And in the background you see another desk with the corner of a computer monitor, and that was also recognized correctly. Now with these point clouds, you can do a whole lot of things, but one thing that you should not do is rely on them blindly, because as you can see, there are outliers, there are these anomalies that are caused by pieces of the picture being blackened out during rectification, and these are all problems that need to be handled before you use these point clouds for anything. But as a first guess to judge the quality of the point clouds, you see that there is a high amount of potential here to do a lot of work with them. So feel free to use the code for any purposes that you see fit, and I'd love to hear what you're doing with it. Thanks very much.